It's been a good few days. Obviously, this is my first year being at the annual meetings. In this chair. Well, not in this chair, just ever. But it's been cool to talk about a lot of different topics. Seeing a lot of peers, former coworkers. It's been great, and then just learning. I've learned a lot just being in a lot of these meetings and a lot of great minds. So good so far. We're in a good spot right now.
One of the things that came out just before we start here is the overtime rule looked like it passed. I was just curious, maybe your initial thoughts of that rule where now each team will get a possession in overtime.
Yeah, I mean everybody has their different takes on sudden death versus getting the extra possession, but we were in favor of it, and we didn't have a we didn't have a issue. We met over it, we discussed it, but I understand. I understand everybody's viewpoints because it's always going to be different viewpoints. But whether you get the extra possession or whether you keep it the same, but we're all good on it.
We talked to Ben at the combine, and he was very specific about kind of what you guys were looking for at X, what you guys wanted, who that was going to be in your offense. Just how does DJ fit kind of that need, and why did you guys like him so much?
Yeah, well, DJ, you're talking about a guy that can take the top off, on the defense. He's got legit speed. He's got size. He's got length. He's got ball skills. So, we have good collaboration sessions between personnel and coaching in our building, and we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And Ben, Dan, L, we're on the same page in terms of what we're looking for at that X receiver position. And the great thing about Ben is that hey, look, that's what he said he wants at the X receiver position. But look. It's not saying that he can't move around and be at different positions. Could play a little bit of slot. Could play a little bit of Z. So that's a cool thing, and what Ben's creativity brings. But obviously DJ brings a lot of good qualities, and like I told you guys last time, number one overall is that he's a football player. So those are the best qualities he brings.
Can you just explain your free agent approach a little bit in general? I guess a lot of people thought maybe you'd have more fixes for the defense.
Yeah.
Why'd you guys take the approach you did?
Well, in terms of just not.
Yeah, maybe not spending more or making bigger moves, re-signing a bunch of your own guys rather than going out into the open market and adding different talent.
Yeah, with free agency, it's always, I think, from maybe the outside narrative, maybe outside of the building, the narrative is external help. You got to get somebody from the outside. You got to get external help. Well, the thing about free agency is that when guys on your own team, when they become UFAs, they're UFAs for the entire league. When they become RFAs, they're RFAs for the entire league. Now, do we may have, a leg up, an advantage because they were with us this past season? Yeah, but with that, first of all, they're free agents for the entire league, and also they're not free. So you're still expending resources to retain those players. Now, I would say this, on multiple levels, I'll say this. Bringing back a lot of our own guys, first of all, they wanted to come back. So I think that's a testament to our organization, everybody in our building, is that those guys wanted to come back. That's the first thing. The other thing that I say about that is the mere fact that a lot of those players, and you could argue, you could bring stats, I'm sure some subjective views on it, but you could argue that they had some of the best years of their careers, if not their best year of their careers, with us last year. So you talk about, Charles Harris, having a breakout year. You talk about, Josh Reynolds coming in late, having a breakout year. You talk about, a Tracy Walker coming. So when you go through the process, and we stack those players versus the guys in the rest of the league. So when you weigh all that in, it's it may look like from the outset that, well, you're not bringing in all this external help because it has to be external, but it's just that it's your own guys. But look, we do our work, we do our due diligence. Those guys had great years for us, and they played really good football. We know them, we deem that they're fits. A Khalif Raymond, and a lot of these discussions, we had discussions, late in the year about, trying to retain those players. We don't know if we can or not. but we just trust our process. But so when I hear that, you wanted to people wanted us to get more external help. It's just, always the grass is not always greener, and you kind of know who the culture fits are and who aren't. But we're really happy with the guys that we brought back. Again, it's a testament to our organization about the guys that wanted to come back and the production that they had last year at this point in their careers.
I'm sorry, building on that just a little bit. I think we all understand the value of continuity in football and chemistry and all that, but how do you answer the perception of bringing continuity back with a 3-win football team?
Yeah, no, I understand, and that's totally fair. And I've said it all along. We had a plan and we stuck to it. And you can call it that. We kind of chose to take a little bit of a hard road last year. I talked to you guys at the end of the season about just, we kind of held back from just adding all these veteran free agents to kind of maybe help us to get another win or so, and we took the plan to develop. Well, I do think that plan started to crystallize, as the season progressed, and I think it ended in a good note. So I totally understand, from especially our fans' perspective, that you say, look, man, 3-1 team, why are you bringing back the same players? But as much work as we put into, the production that those players had, in our system, and then having that continuity with our coaching staff coming back as well, there's a lot of optimism for that. And again, it's still being aggressive. It's just that, it's not always saying that you're not being aggressive if you don't go the external route.
So you think with all that being said, what do you view as your biggest weaknesses, I guess,
Going into the draft,
what do you view as your biggest weaknesses on the roster?
you're trying to add depth at all levels. There's places where we'll need starters, obviously, and I think there'll be both sides of the ball. But so it's hard to just pinpoint one. I don't think our roster's at a point where we can say we don't really need to add offensive players. We don't need to add a defensive starter. We can add to both sides of the ball for sure, and then obviously depth behind it.
Right, just
Would it be fair to say that the offense, maybe just looking at the roster and some of the positions, the depth that you have is maybe a little bit ahead of the defense at this point? Or is that not fair?
Yeah, I think that's a subjective view in terms of now when you say just the offense as a whole, I could see where our offensive line is stable, it's intact. You could say that offensive line is a strength of our team, which is a good thing. But at the same time, I mean, there's always room to improve there, right? So that's not saying that, we have a pretty good offensive line, but we can't just say that we know that it's the best offensive line in the league. You know what I mean? So you want it to be the best, so we can add everywhere.
I just want to follow on sort of what Justin asked too, because you have just about everybody back defensively. What is the reason for optimism that you're better right now defensively than you were? Charles did have his best year, and Tracy had a good year and everything, but like Justin said, you guys were the 31st ranked defense or whatever. So.
Yeah, well, I think it was a lot of. I think everybody was figuring everybody out last year. We had new scheme in place, new system in place. Dan first year, permanent head coach. Me first year GM. And we had to go through some adversity, early on. And I think as the season progressed, especially that second half, when a tweak was made here or there, some players that were added, it started to come to fruition. But even from a defensive standpoint, we did make some tweaks schematically too. So and I think that's a testament to Dan, because he always remains open-minded and says, well, what's the best thing for the players that we have? And so to have, a coach that's that open-minded, at all points, whether things are going good, whether things are going not so good, I think that's always an advantage. But we're very happy for, guys like Charles Harris, guys like Tracy, when they have seasons like they had and productive, then they have the continuity that we're bringing back with the coaching staff and, relatively the same system. It's going to be an advantage for us.
I wanted to ask you about DJ.
Yeah.
Tim brought up the X skills that you were looking for. He clearly fits all the physical benchmarks. You talked about the introduction, the character benchmarks. So why 1 year? I think it makes sense with the risk mitigation, but if you clearly believe in the guy, so if he plays out the way you believe, are you putting yourself in a tough position to maintain continuity and keep him in the fold?
Yeah, and those are discussions that we have, before we make the decision to make those kind of signings. But we're very well aware that, look, end of the year, we might have, hopefully we're in a position where, we're looking to sign DJ back long term, or that we would have to, franchise him or whatever it is. There's a lot of different scenarios that you can go down. But end of the day, we just felt really, really good at it. Now, there's a lot of different reasons to go to the one-year deal, but it's not for anything of like a lack of belief or lack, you know what I mean? It was just, hey, look, I think it was the best fit for both parties, and but it's nothing but optimism that we're looking ahead for.
There was, big quarterback turnover movement around the NFL again this
Yeah.
offseason. Why were you guys not involved in that? How do you feel about your quarterback position long term, not just for 2022?
Well, I mean, Jared played good football for us, late in the year. So we have a lot of optimism about Jared going forward. So we have a quarterback. If you're asking like why do we not kind of hop into that world, but we're happy with what Jared's at right now, and we're looking forward to having a productive year for us.
I guess I'm mostly asking as it relates to the draft. Like, how comfortable are you with him being your quarterback in 2023? I mean, what do you think you have in him from a long-term standpoint?
A starter that can be productive for us. I mean, I think that's what we have. So, I mean, whatever the case is, Jared's our quarterback, and we're gonna make sure that he's put in the best position to succeed, and we'll let the chips fall from there.
How does that relate to the number 2 pick? I mean, is there a quarterback in the mix for you guys at number 2?
I would say this at number 2 pick. There's multiple players at multiple positions that that if we turn the card in today, we could turn that card in today and sleep well at night. I know, and that's a testament to everybody in our building, our personnel department. We're so far ahead in the process. Our scouts, and there's still some pro days left and all that. I don't think pro days define a player. So we've done enough work where, there's multiple positions where we could turn it in and sleep good at night.
Quarterback specifically one of those positions?
I said there's multiple positions. So.
Is there an advantage, though, or I guess obviously there is an advantage to getting a young quarterback and having them learn under Goff? Is that something that would be of interest to you guys to try to get somebody in for the future if Jared doesn't stick and stay?
Sure, I could see some advantage of if there is a young quarterback that can learn under Jared. I don't think Jared would have any issues taking on that role. He's had more younger guys with less experience behind him. So he'd be very, very comfortable with that.
What are the goals for this year? I mean, obviously you guys had a lot more growth near the end of the year last year. So where do you go from here the second year in sticking with your plan? Obviously, a lot of people aren't expecting playoffs, but do you expect playoffs? Kind of give me a sense of what you guys look for in year 2 under the system, under the regime, and with the players you have.
Well, we're always looking for continued improvement, continued growth. The theme was last year, as much as we talked about, want to see what we had, and we're built on grit, perseverance, getting through that adverse moments. Dan and I did set out and said, like, we want to be a better team than we were the week before. So each week we want to make improvement. Well, the same will you say for entering year 2 of our regime is that we want to be a better program than we were last year, and that's really the only thing that we really can control. And so we're doing everything we can. We're working as hard as we can to make sure that we are a better team, next year or head into this year than we were last year.
I'm going to try to word this so that I don't waste the question, but back to the top of the draft. One of those positions almost certainly in the mix is edge rusher. And there's 4 guys kind of in that top tier mix, maybe more. But like when you're comparing, contrasting these 4 guys that have those maybe elite skill sets, what are like separating factors? Whether you want to speak specifically at that position or any position when you're comparing, contrasting guys that are
I think you framed that well.
Use this question well.
But I'll say this. I do think that when you say just edge rusher, when you put that in that bucket, edge rusher, I do think that there's a lot of different qualities that they can all bring, and that will depend on edge rusher for what scheme, for which technique you want to play. Is it an edge rushing wide 9 or a wide 5? Is it an edge rushing 5 technique? Is it an edge, you know what I mean? So when you just say edge, I get it. And I often just say rush. I just say, look, man, who can rush? But I do think that, they can all come in different flavors. But at the end of the day, you want them to get out to the quarterback. Now they can get out to the quarterback in a lot of different ways. But I do think that they can all be different.
One other quarterback thing. Big picture and as it relates to Jared, the AFC, a lot of those teams seem to be in an arms race, right? They're acquiring some of the best quarterbacks out there, thinking that is what allows the team to have sustainable success. So I guess I just wanted to know from your standpoint, how important is that quarterback position to being able to have that sustainable success, and you consider Jared in that elite tier of quarterbacks that would allow you guys to have that sort of success, however you define it.
Well, obviously, the quarterback position is extremely critical to any team's success. So, that goes without saying. But again, we have a lot of confidence in Jared. Again, we're all about putting him in the best position to succeed. And if we do that, and then our confidence that we have with him, and like we talked about the continuity that we have coming back with, not only the receivers but the coaching staff, offensive line, we're very confident in Jared, what he can do.
You had a pretty terrific draft last year, just in terms of guys coming in and having some immediate success, guys contributing to the football team. Is there any one of those group of guys that you drafted last year that you're really looking for in taking a big step? And if they do, that can really help your football team.
Is there any one group of guys?
Is there any one guy maybe that you're looking at that to take that really next step to really help you guys?
From last year?
Last year's crew guys. Obviously, you want to see every guy, improve, take the next step. But is there one guy you look at? Oh, he really kind of takes that next step. We can be a better football team.
Yeah, I think Tim. I think that's fair to say, really, for all of them. And I know that we had a lot of playtime percentage and an uptick with our rookies last year. But I would say I think they all can get better, and I think that that's a great thing about those guys, is that I think they'll all tell you that they can all get better. So whether it's just the Penei Sewells of the world, he'll be one of the first ones to tell you, I can do this better. Aleem McNeil, Levi, Derek Barnes, I think you saw his growth over the years, but I think they can all get better. And again, that's both sides of the ball, at multiple positions, even down to the, Jamar Jefferson's, he had his sprinkles of play time and he showed some flashes, but, he can still get better at special teams, so I think they'll all, they will get better. We have the coaching staff for that improvement, but, the best thing is that they have the right mindset, that they know they have to improve.
Another sort of philosophical question for you, but number two, the history has always been quarterbacks, edge rushers, pass rushers, whatever it is, offensive linemen. Why has that always been the case in the NFL, do you think? Why are those positions?
Those are premium positions. They can really lay the foundation of your team's success. I truly believe that. Now, there's other game changers at other positions that you can find outside of those positions, but obviously when you want to have a quarterback that can lead your football team, but you really have to have a guy that can protect your quarterback, and then at the end of the day you want to have a guy that can get after your quarterback too, you know what I mean? So that's why I think that they're all what you call them premium positions. But I do think that there's other positions that, you can find some game changers out there.
So for you at 2, how do you balance that positional value, versus best player at whatever other position it may be?
Yeah, well, I've always said we want a game changer at that pick. So whatever position that is, again, we're comfortable at multiple positions. If the draft was today, we can turn that card and sleep good at night. But at the end of the day, we're looking for a game changer. So whatever position that is, if it's a game changing, I don't know. No one said specialist yet, so.
Long snapper.
But we're looking for game changers. So whatever position that is, that's what we're looking at.
Time of year is when we've seen some of those pre-draft trades. 49ers last year, for
Mhm.
example, there was a Jets swap maybe
Mhm.
years ago. There isn't maybe the quarterbacks at the top that kind of maybe facilitate those trades. But have you fielded any interest in the number 2 pick, and are you, I guess, open for business at that spot?
Yeah, we've had dialogue with a couple of teams. I wouldn't say it's been a lot, but there has been a couple of teams that we've had some dialogue with.
Does the lack of maybe the quarterback position and the willingness to trade up and pay that premium price to get that guy, is that lessen maybe the package of picks that maybe that number 2 spot commands maybe in a different year?
Again, there's 32 different draft boards, and there's we have our value of guys, including the quarterback position, but that doesn't mean the other 31 teams, have the same exact value. So, it just depends on how they value, those quarterbacks, in this year's class. So, but I totally understand your question, and it's very valid. But it's just hard for me to say it because I don't know how those other 31 teams are valuing those guys.
Receiver money really exploded this offseason. Like
Mhm.
Kirk and Devontae, right? How does that impact what teams do in the draft? I guess. I mean, do you foresee more teams looking for that position so they don't have to pay that premium at some point? I mean, is there a trickle down, I guess, to what happens in free agency that then impacts the draft position?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I don't truly see that it will really change anybody's plans because at the end of the day, when you're drafting, you're talking about the future, and so when you're paying those big contracts, and now it'd be cool to do the analytics of the ages of those guys that got those big contracts, but still at the end of the day, you still got to draft for your future, and you don't know what those teams that made those moves, what their intentions are for their future. Is it, you see the headline of the contract, but then when sometimes you dive into the fine print, it's just that length or the structure of it might be a little bit different. So without knowing what their true intent is, it's hard for me to answer that. But
It doesn't necessarily replace that though, right? Like, I wanted a receiver, but I'm not going to pay that money, so I'm just going to draft it. I mean, the guy's got to be the right prospect for that team too.
yeah, but then you got to look at, all right, do you want to put that all on a rookie receiver? And say, okay, man, we got priced out of free agency, so we'll just draft one. Well, is he really gonna?
Yeah, can he do what?
So that's always the give and take you gotta take into consideration when it comes to those decisions.
If I go back to the trade topic for a second, do you feel like you're in a position where you could pull a trade before the draft, or you kind of want to see how that first pick falls before you trigger a deal potentially?
Oh, I think definitely we could pull the trade off if the other team is willing before the draft. And I'll say even going back to last year, when we're picking at 7, because I know the questions asked about, how many teams you had dialogue with. Well, I think this time last year, it was about a couple of teams in terms of like dialogue that we had with teams, but it does increase as the times go out. So I would say right now it's still relatively early for those discussions, but I would expect for it to heat up, especially with the pick that we have this year, because it definitely heated up with even us at 7 last year. So I expect to have more dialogue.
Tim mentioned just the success of the draft class last year.
Mm-hmm.
You were able to put the guys in that draft board kind of at the same time they were drinking from a fire hose. New responsibilities, right? So
Did you really think I'll drink from a fire hose? Just saying, oh. That's very fair. That was actually.
you're not alone in that assessment. But Rod said he said in the draft meeting or some draft meetings recently, light years ahead of where you were last year. So can you just explain what that looks like this year versus last year, the pre-draft process, whether it's knowing your own roster and how things fit together, knowing your coaches that better. What does it look like, and how do you think that will help you going into this draft?
Well, gosh, there's so many ways I can answer that. There's so many people that are part of the reason why we're light years ahead. But I would first I'll talk about staff. Just we have an amazing personnel staff, and so having a system in place to be so far ahead at this point compared to what was last year is phenomenal. Our area scouts really bought into everything that we were doing, and we have what we call an over-the-top staff with with a lot of our directors and personnel executives, and obviously our assistant GM Ray Agnew. So having that in place and having the trust in those guys and as good a job that they do, that's allowed us to become ahead. But also just from a free agency standpoint, Mike Disner does not get recognized as much as he should. But just all the work he does and making sure that our salary cap and our cash spending is intact, it puts us at a very advantageous point in terms of from a free agency standpoint. So allows to kind of not have to pull the foot off the gas on the draft prep and still kind of remain aggressive in both phases.
More than anybody, scouts are creatures of habit. They don't like change all that much to their routine and their process. So what is the biggest thing you ask the scouts to change and embrace that might have been a challenge for them, but you're happy with the way they have?
Yeah, well, not to get into too much detail, but I've always been a proponent of I've always told our scouts, hey, look, just because scouting has been done this way for X amount of many years, it doesn't mean that we always have to keep doing it. We're really big on process evolution. That's a big part of our philosophy from a personnel department standpoint. So we're always trying to evolve our process and get better. And when you're involved in the process, that involves change and doing things. It's my job to make sure that change and that why is explained. And so I do challenge them to accept those changes, and but it's my responsibility to tell them the why, and that's what I always try to do is just bring that clarity in terms of like, this is why we're doing, because look, everybody's trying to get an edge in this league, and I've always said that if you're doing everything that everybody else is doing, it's going to be hard to get an edge. So so along with that comes change, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And if you make a change and everybody's on board with it, and it doesn't work, then I got to hold myself accountable and say, hey, look, that didn't work. So roll my sleeves up, go back to the drawing board, and say, hey, look, man, this is why it didn't work, this is why it failed, and use it as a learning experience and try something else.
You mentioned cash spending.
Yeah.
Could have a couple, deals on the table coming up this summer. Hawkinson, Imani, a couple guys.
Yeah.
How likely, I guess, are you to go down that road? Hope to get something done with those two.
Yeah, well, Hawkinson, obviously, he's a big part of what we did last year. It was unfortunate when he became unavailable for us, but he's another one that we'll be continuing to lean on this year. And Imani, just another example of a guy that had his best season, last year. So it just kind of correlates back to that narrative of signing back our own guys, But obviously Imani, with the ball production that he had and just being just a good teammate, he really developed as a leader. He's gonna be another one. He's still a young guy that as Alton says, sometimes still has meat left on the bone. There's still upside in him. So yeah, those guys will be important discussions that we'll have to have for the future. But those guys are productive players for us, and we're excited about them this year.
I mean, this summer you hope to get them done, right? Get ahead of the curve. Is there a timetable or anything?
I wish I had that crystal ball to give you a better answer on that. But I will say the main thing is, and going back to the cash spending thing, is that Mike Disner does an excellent job in terms of, his intelligence, his creativity in those regards, and his foresight. We're very like-minded. We're always looking down the road and not just trying to, be a prisoner of the moment, here and there. But those are discussions that we will have, and we've already had them actually. Now I'm not going to get into the specifics of dialogue with their camps and all that type of stuff, but we always keep the dialogue open. We always want to make sure the communication's open.
Just to be clear, when you say we've already had them, are you talking you guys have already had them internally?
Yeah, we've already had internal discussions. Yeah.
And then fifth-year option with Hawkinson, it sounds like that would be
Yeah.
the plan if something long-term is not worked out, right?
Yeah, if unless something doesn't happen, then we would have an intention to get that 5th-year option done.
I just want to ask you quickly about Jared Davis. I think there was a desire to bring him back last year, and maybe got priced out of that desire, but
Yeah.
just the opportunity to bring him back. And I think Dan said it. He thought there was a lot of meat left on the bone with JD. Just the chance to maybe revisit that this year. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, well, what does it mean for JD? Because, and I agree. I don't. It is true. We weren't able to afford to bring him back. We wanted to, but we did get priced out. When it came to that. But I will say the cool thing about JD, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I can tell you nothing but the truth. Again, hearing him as much as he wanted to come back here to Detroit, and that kind of started with him and Dan all had a conversation, before free agency really had kicked off, and we had a lot of transparent discussions, and he really liked what we were doing. And then it was cool to hear him talk about, even when he was in New York, kind of just keeping up with some of the guys that was with us. And he mentioned that he saw my draft video with me being explosive and all that stuff, but he said that he just said it felt like home. And I thought it was a testament of not just kind of like, what we did last year, because I tell all the free agents and everybody, say, hey, look, I don't have to sell what our culture is and what we're about. Just ask the players on our team, just ask them, and the players that are on our team and are not on our team. And that's just us being consistent with who we are. But it was cool to hear Jared say that. He had some adversity that he battled last year. I think that's well known. But I think everybody deserves second chances. We did see some things on tape that encouraged us to think that he'd be a good fit here to come back.
One last housekeeping thing. Arden Key, is that still a possibility for you?
Yeah, obviously, it's well known that, he came and he took a visit. We'll just see where it goes. We haven't, totally closed the door on that. And I would say just with free agency in general, we're not done. It's just that, you always want to get it all done that first week and, the big headlines. But, there's still some guys out there that I think that we can add still that can help our football team.
How do you feel about Hard Knocks?
Oh, you know what? Hard Knocks. Please don't say that. No, there's nobody that's gonna overshadow Dan in that one. But I would say this. Obviously my time with the Rams, I have previous experience with Hard Knocks and dealing with it. And the cool thing is that I want to say the first time was 2016. When the team first relocated from St. Louis to LA. It was Goff's rookie year. And then back when they did kind of the joint with the Chargers and the Rams, years later, I did notice just in that gap of time, they evolved in terms of what their operation, their setup is. So, but I think it's great for the fans. The fans drive our game, and they're everything. So, I think, and the other thing is about to allow them to get that peek behind the curtains, I guess you could say. But it's all about learning. The fans can learn things that they may have not known about not only us, which is kind of how the league works, but and there's a lot of narrative about are they a distraction and all that stuff. But I do think that they're aware of that narrative, and I do think that they go above and beyond to make sure, you know, that that's not the case. And so, you know, the times that I've had with it, it's been enjoyable experiences, and I'm fired up about it.